Welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. Advice, thoughts, and stories from a married couple on cybersecurity, technology, and life in general. Now here are your hosts, Didi and Lital.
Hello and welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. It's another week. What's up?
A couple of thoughts. After watching a couple of us on video, I was in Israel, I was showing the fam our episodes. I always look sleepy. I've decided that from now on I'm gonna wear shades in studio every
Shades?
time. Shades, because
You need an eye lift.
That's what my sister said.
Yeah.
She said I need an eye lift. My mom says basically I need to have overall repair surgery, and my sister says I need eye lifts. And I think I'll just
You
do
can
this.
go to bed also.
I'll just wear shades. This is the easiest way. The Blues Brothers look.
I think it's
Or Ray
okay for
Charles.
people to look at you and think you are sleepy.
I'll do the Ray Charles.
I wear my sunglasses at night.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm just tired because I'm tired.
I'm just tired because I'm old, I'm fat, and so on and so forth. And I do need eye lift surgery. But regardless of that, the Bruins are up. The Celtics are choking, as usual. They're playing like people that were not even supposed to be in the playoff. They're playing a play-in team, and they're losing. And the Patriots picked a quarterback at number 3 who is not accurate, but is big and strong and not very smart. So we're going to be the Buffalo Bills. So looking forward to football season.
Yeah. I want to drop a recommendation that I already dropped on my LinkedIn for people on a different topic. You said, no, not much of politics, but I do want to say it. I realized people in the US were not exposed to a movie that was in the 80s called The Third Wave.
No, The Wave.
The Wave.
Not Third Wave.
The Third Wave. The Third Wave is the name of the experiment.
Yes.
So it's basically an experiment that a teacher in Palo Alto, California, ran in
The 60s.
1967 when he taught 10th grade history, contemporary history. He told about Nazi Germany, and he felt
he was asked
how come normal Germans became, part of the Nazi movement. And to try to explain it, he started an experiment. So I would highly recommend for everyone listening to us to educate yourself by checking on Wikipedia, and we'll put a post about it, the topic of this experiment, the third wave. It's basically how easy it is to mobilize.
to get to groupthink.
Yeah.
It's groupthink.
It's groupthink, and it scares me a lot. This is what we see on campuses right now. And
Forget the campuses.
I'm sleepless at night because of that, and people should be aware of it.
You're overthinking about the campuses. This is the thing that everybody doesn't get. George Orwell wrote 1984 in 49, and Animal Farm, and
It was the beginning of the Cold War, right?
Yes, and there's Twain wrote about this as well, and Edgar Allan Poe wrote about it. So groupthink is a known thing. I think even some of the Roman philosophers were writing about groupthink. So groupthink is something that happens a lot. People are herd animals, and they behave as a herd animals. And we need to think about it of why we react as a herd. And if we are talking about herds, it kind of herds us towards leadership. And my best friend at asking hard question, Martin, and hopefully he listens to this. Aaron definitely will call him and say, hey, did you listen to these podcasts? He's mentioning you.
So this is dedicated to Martin.
This is dedicated to Martin. One of the episodes that I dedicate to Martin.
Yep.
He asked a very, very hard question. He says that somebody that works for him came up to him and says, I want to manage. And Martin was looking at the org size and said, this is weird. And Martin being this is the thing I love about Martin. And this is something that if you don't do, as a manager, learn how to do, is whenever you have a strong conviction about something, ask a third party for advice. Whenever I'm absolutely sure about something, when I don't have something that I have doubts about, I always ask somebody about. The stronger my conviction about something is, the better it is to ask for a second opinion.
That's because you don't want to be in your own
echo chamber.
Group thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Because this is exactly how we fuck up. When the more certain you are, the more likely it is, when we were talking about the think fast and slow, there are things that your instincts are very good at, and there are things that your instincts are very bad at. Like statistics, most people's instincts are very bad at. So getting a second opinion and not getting stuck in your ways is a very good idea.
So why was he kind of overthrown by the request of this person to become a manager?
Because the team was small, and there was still a lot of room for growth in the individual contributor space, and also the desire to be a manager when somebody like 100% a manager, not like not like a player coach, but if you're managing a certain size of group of people, you need to define what your role as a manager is. But this is where we started having a very deep conversation of what is the role of the manager. And a lot of time the role of the manager is defined by the way that the organization is built. And this is kind of where we need to think of what is called control span. All of us that go through the IDF, besides learning that everything is broken into 3 parts, we learn what is called mutat shlita, which I don't know how to translate.
It's basically the control span.
The control span
is how it's
how many
who are you controlling? How many people are underneath you?
But
and
it's
who's
also
doing what?
But it's also the expectation of what is expected of you as a manager, because there are organizations that expect the managers to make technical decisions, and if that's the organization that you're in, challenge it, because I've learned that most of the time when managers make technical decisions, it's a bad idea. If the manager doesn't hire people that are smarter than him and are more capable than him and are able to make decisions, or you've nominated the best technical person on your team to be the manager and not the person with the best managerial skills.
Okay, you're already, as usual,
diving into the topic.
Yeah, ahead of yourself.
Yeah, but as I said, the question is a difficult question because it's really dependent on the organization.
So I think it all started with us talking on the way here of like, what's the ideal number of direct reports? At what point you should start delegating and having, sub-managers, reports. Is it a fixed one? Is it something that depends on the org? I think the kind of
dependent on the person. So
right.
There's the things that depend on the person and the things that depend on the org. But
I think there are like some rule of thumbs to think about that are always kind of like always true, which is the human capacity to actually have meaningful one-on-one relationship with direct reports, and that regardless of the organization. You only have typically 5 work days, and you have that many hours a day, and you need work to be done, and you also want to have face time with your direct reports. So for me, typically, I start with that when I'm thinking about how many direct reports I can have versus when do I need to have sub-reporting, because I typically can very effectively manage directly about 5 people. Maybe it goes to 6, maybe sometimes it's a 4, but this is when it starts breaking, because the way I'm thinking about it is I can have a quality one-on-one with a person every day with one of my direct reports, or I can have one day of just my direct reports one-on-ones. And then I can meet with them as a team, management team, and so on. So I think about it as a mathematical problem first, and then I think about the org, the capabilities, the people. Do you have this kind of like way of thinking about it? Because for me, it's the quality of relationship, and quality sometimes also mean quantity, the time I can actually put into meeting, coaching. Like you walk with your team, you meet with them, you hang out, you do stuff.
Yeah.
So numbers matter here.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So first is the organization. A lot of my span of control depends on my organization. Both Dennis and I kind of saw that there's a magic number in Cisco versus in a startup. When we were doing CDO, Dennis managed basically everybody in the organization. He had like 30 direct reports because almost everybody was in the office, and the people that were not in the office were very senior people that basically are able to...
So a flat organization, 30 direct reports, no
like
sub-managers.
No sub-managers.
Okay.
Because when you have a lot of senior people...
They can manage themselves.
They manage themselves.
And when do you get to talk to them when you have 30?
It really depends on the people type. Some people don't need one-on-ones. So some of my reports say to me, we don't need one-on-ones. We'll call you when we need a one-on-one. We'll tell you when there's a problem, or you tell us when there's a problem. But if there's no problem,
they run.
And a big chunk of mine and Dennis's job when we were in CDO being reintegrated into Cisco was to protect our senior people from being drowned in Cisco tax meetings. Mm-hmm. So our main job was basically saying, don't talk to our people because you're wasting their time. They're not being effective. So being a buffer as a manager is also as an important thing.
Yep.
But then there's also what the organization requires you to do with people. There are bonuses talks. There's performance reviews. There's a whole bunch of additional work that needs to happen in a lot of organizations. Training that needs to happen. Conversations with regards to training. Conversations with regards to other elements. If once the organization becomes an organization that is more heavy-handed on management, you'll need to have managers whose whole job is basically dealing with the org-related tax work of meetings and things like that. It's basically being like a dispatcher of tasks. Mm-hmm. And remember our conversation about bullshit jobs? A lot of times there's a lot of bullshit work that needs to happen. Budget planning, explaining that there's resource allocation, which reminds me, I need to finish my resource allocations, otherwise I'll get in trouble. So there are these things that need to happen. Mechanics. There's actual meeting mechanics that need to happen. And those limit how big your organization can be. And this forces you to be a full-time dedicated manager that doesn't do technical work, that doesn't do anything besides being a manager. And when you talk about 4 or 5, when I see 4 or 5 in any company and can't manage more than that, it means that either you do have dedicated work that you need to do as a player coach. Mm-hmm. And I think you do a lot of these things yourself.
I'm typically in an organization when I'm still hands-on.
And being a player.
And this is startup world, yes.
So in startup world, it does make sense.
I can go to 8, but the quality of my coaching and the time I will be left to do my own things.
And that's another thing.
Will go down.
It's how many people in your organization need actually to be coached, evolved, advanced. If I have 3 to 4 junior people, I will not have more than 4 or 5 direct reports working for me, because what will happen I cannot. I'm supposed to make people better, they need more quality time.
Mm-hmm.
I usually will have one-on-ones with more junior people on a weekly basis, and make sure that I have dedicated time. And I also need to find ways. This is where it becomes more challenging, because you need to find the people that are the most in need of having you, and are the people that will ask for this the least. And the more people need to be coached to talk about their needs, the more that they're reluctant to do so. And so you need to be very aware as a manager of how many people you hire in a direct fashion when there are people that need direct interaction with you. It is, by the way, possible, and this really depends on how flexible your organization is in terms of managerial constructs, because I'm a big believer also in the mentorship model.
Mm-hmm.
If an organization is supportive of the mentorship model, then it makes me the bureaucrat manager and not the leader that coaches. So
because a mentor will coach the person
yes.
on the day-to-days. Yeah, it also makes me think about, which I don't have the right answer. So let's say for this guy that Martin may promote to become a manager, how many people should he get as of day one, fresh manager, and what type team members he should get?
I think when he was talking to me about this, he was thinking of traversing from player coach towards full-time manager and just manager.
Got it. I'm rarely in places when people are full-time managers. That is a thing. I hardly see people that don't have any, even partial, very small IC role.
No, I've seen places that it really depends on how you believe your talent should be grown. So in the engineering world, it is very possible to be a full-time manager, even in a startup, even in a young startup, if you truly believe, and this is a belief system. It has nothing to do with anything.
It doesn't fit your everybody rose.
It doesn't
philosophy.
Fit, I said it doesn't fit my part of the world. I didn't say
Viking ship.
It doesn't work in Viking ships. But that's not who I would hire. But I have seen companies that truly believe and embrace the draft model. The draft model means that they hire a lot of college hires. They have a lot of turnover.
Mm-hmm.
And this is possible when you have some very veteran startup people that really know and are comfortable at hiring fast and firing fast. It can work really, really well in sales organizations. Not so much engineering organizations, but in sales organizations, that you'll have an organization that basically continuously hires basically SDRs that go SDR to AE very, very, very fast,
mm-hmm.
and fire very fast those that can't execute.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to have full-time managers, because all they need to do is track that people are doing their jobs, what they're doing, enabling those that need enablement, firing those that need to be fired. It makes a lot of sense even in small organizations that need a lot of enterprise sales people to have that model of hiring junior people and continuously monitor. In engineering organizations, I'm a big believer of hiring veteran talent, but I have seen also tech companies that hire engineers, a lot of interns, and even in CDO, because of how the Cisco budget worked. We hired like 10 interns every intern season. And then some of the managers, basically became de facto just managers, because all they did was manage the interns, because there's a lot of managerial
Yeah,
overhead.
when you have juniors, like, as you say, interns, SDRs,
Co-ops.
Co-ops, yes. I think if you're in a call center environment, managing it, organizations that are high throughput, KPI driven, fast turnaround, you just manage people by those numbers and like by the process. It's really needed to have those that keeps an eye on
the numbers.
The numbers.
And manages to the numbers and manages
Exactly.
and manages to the process. And this is really critical. Now, I think a lot of times when somebody says I feel like I know I'm no longer able to be a player coach, I need to be a full-time manager, is to have a very deep, I'm not talking just about engineering. I'm not talking about any role that is not engineering or product management. In those roles, if somebody says I want to be just a manager and not a manager coach,
Player coach.
There's a couple of questions I like to ask. Question number one is, if this is what you're doing, what value are you to me? This is a legitimate question, because I would say I prefer to have 2 player coaches that are super capable, because your salary is high. If you're a technical lead 2 in Cisco, like a manager, a senior manager or manager, you're now an expensive person.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a player coach and I have 2 of you, now I have a lot more capacity.
Versus one pure manager.
Versus one pure manager. So, and
also...
And a lot of times I like to ask managers of how are their teams better than them? And if they don't have a passion to get the people under them to be successful, I don't view them as capable managers.
But I think that's the point. Some people are really, really good in driving outcomes from people. They are great in mobilization, getting people to work together, facilitating, teamwork, project managing stuff. Maybe those type of people, they might not be great individual contributors, but they might have really good managerial capabilities, and they're good for this,
so this is
manager-only
So
role.
this is where you need to ask yourself, there are dedicated jobs for process management that are individual contributor related.
Right, from agile coaches to project managers to Scrum
Master,
managers,
exactly.
whatever it's called.
Exactly. And all of them are
They are not, typically they're not managers. They're kind of like a consultant, individual contributor that is project managing.
Yes.
And they are agnostic to...
Yeah. So from my perspective, a manager's job is to deal with...
Do you think it's better to have them than
Yes.
a manager that is like the project manager of everything?
Yes.
Why?
Because first, most of the time, project managers need to spend time with other project managers. It's because a lot of times in the bigger organizations, you have people that program managers manage the interactions of programs.
And there are a lot of programs, and they need to fit into the biggest scheme of things.
Exactly. So dealing with the managers is not necessarily a good thing.
Okay.
I believe that the managerial job is
To develop the person
To
and not
develop
to drive the project.
yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Those are 2 different
These
aspects.
are 2 different tasks.
Okay.
And driving customer requirements need to come from product managers. There's a lot of people that are individual contributor with manager in their title that are not a manager. There's product managers, there's program managers, there's scrum masters. Everybody that deals with the process is not supposed to be that. And if you're talking about tech leadership, there's tech leaders, there's architects, there's senior individual contributors who are supposed to be the visionaries and to drive through the innovation. The manager's job is to make sure to identify that the people who are doing their jobs are doing their job well, to stack rank continuously the talent, be able to weed out bad, because that gets in the way of the team, And this is a very hard job because most people can't fire to save their lives. And some people can't hire to save their lives.
Yeah.
So your job is, if you're a manager, if you're a full-time manager, is hiring, firing, talent nurturing, talent
Even
management.
if you're a part-time and you're an IC,
Yeah,
that's when you're managing in your managerial capacity,
Yes.
that's your role.
That's your role. And
Hiring, firing, mentoring, getting
Yes.
people to do the job at the best.
exactly. And encouraging people to step up. It's like being a hockey coach. To know who you're going to assign to what task, to be extremely successful, when to pull somebody that's not good at their task off their task, when to say, hey, we're at capacity. Listen, I can't take another thing in. One of my businesses being the office of no is to say, hey, we can't do this.
Yep.
This is our capacity. This is what the team can do. Please don't add more.
Yep.
And also understand, so this is kind of a little bit of these elements. These are the elements of the manager. And if you're not willing to do all the bad stuff, then, and that's why I think in most of the time I like the player coach models a lot, because the player coach models allow people to do fun stuff while doing the bad stuff. Because if there are very few people who are basically professional sin eaters. I think a manager is like a sin eater. It's the people that eat the shit for everybody else. And kind of Dennis used to call me human shield. That my job is to take all the arrows for everybody. To be the bad guy that way nobody wants to be the bad guy. And and this is very it's nobody gives you credit for doing that. And if you're not willing to do those things and suffer, then this is not your job.
You can be an amazing IC.
Yes. And this is
And
something
we had an episode just about that. Now I remember
Yes.
that we talked about
Exactly.
the IC versus the managerial track.
Exactly.
What's for you? So specifically about you, what was the biggest team of direct reports you managed directly?
I think in
And what's the smallest? And what's the sweetest spot for you?
So if we would have continued ORT and I would have been able to continue hiring at my leisure, I probably can get to a similar number like with Dennis, to 40 people reporting direct to me and being a flat org. Because you really don't need, unless there's...
You feel like you don't need sub-teams.
I don't like to have sub-teams.
Okay.
Because I think this is where the teams need to be able to do breakdown. The teams need to be able to...
But don't they form at least sub-teams for per assignments and stuff?
So this is something that's really important
Like
to know.
organic ones?
No, because this is a common mistake. There's like the whole kumbaya of agile. There's what is called agile bullshit kumbaya. Let's get together. Let's do planning together. No, I strongly disbelieve in that. I believe that multitasking is bad for you. I think making somebody do things together as a team is a way to do something that can cost 5 points in 50 points. Because every time somebody needs to talk to somebody, just let
time.
It wastes time.
So
Communication.
you're saying an individual has a task, not a team has a task.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you can't break down things to tasks to get to the individual level, you have you're not hiring correctly. You're not building correctly.
Okay.
The more senior people usually break tasks down and hand it down to the individuals to just do this.
Okay.
Now, this is not for everybody. And by the way, it's not something that can work every place. This is when you build cloud products in cloud, in very high CI/CD processes, in very high flux teams. If you're trying to build the hardware for a legacy product that's been there out there for 30 years, you need the teamwork. Nobody can do everything there. Nobody can have the whole thing in their head. It's impossible. So from my perspective, I can get to 30, 40 people reporting directly to me as long as I don't have to pay corporate taxes on managerial overhead. And managerial overhead, 8 to 10 usually.
I mean, it's impossible
I'm at
once you need
capacity.
to manage everyone's assessments and
The smallest,
comps and
the
stuff.
smallest team that I had was when I was working for Matan back there. And that's because I managed 3 individuals that needed so much management. It's one of those things that you have people that are dropped on you. They cause problems. You work in a highly bureaucratic organization, and every person...
The
is a
one young soldier. That
Yes. That
I remember
his mom
him.
used to call me all the time to
Complain.
complain.
You're a bad manager.
No, that Matan was the bad manager.
Oh, okay.
So this is where when you are a full-time manager with 3 people and you're not working for the government, that's a problem. So I think this is kind of where my mind's at.
So I think to summarize, and it's very the whole thing of how many people you can manage and what's the setup, like everything in life, it depends.
It depends on the context.
It depends on the context. I think each one of us has his own preferred ways of doing it, and
But I
has
do want to give our listeners a couple of rules that allow them to ask the right questions when somebody on their team comes to them and says, "Hey, I want to be a full-time manager. I'm an IC manager, and I want to be a full-time manager." What are the questions that they need to ask the team member? And what are the questions they need to ask themselves?
Okay, you go.
Question number 1. How much of their job is corporate overhead? Because if they find that 30% of what the team does is corporate overhead, they need to have a dedicated person like that program manager, like this chief of staff, like somebody like that's their whole job. There's people who are excellent at these jobs, and more likely than not, one of these people will do the job of 50 in their full-time job, not of 2 or 3. They'll do the job of 50. They'll do it better than everybody.
Okay.
They'll save you a shitload of money, because people that, like, we have a chief of staff that she can understand the budget better than anybody else. Gwen can understand the budget in levels that I've
chief
never
of staffs.
Chief of staff
very
or
good.
financial assistants, people like that guys are like unreal at
Okay.
dealing with this. So understand, do you need actually a chief of staff to take the overhead from all your ICs and suddenly, everybody's a lot lighter?
Right. Okay. What else?
Question number 2 is, do you feel passionate about the success of others? Ask that person that wants to be a full-time manager, do you feel passionate about the success of others? Don't listen for the answer. Look at how they squirm. If they squirm, they're not that.
Okay.
Then ask them in terms of, please, can you describe to me how your day looks like?
And how your day will look like once you become a full-time manager.
Yes. And I think with these 3 questions, you can answer yourself very fast. What are is this person really needs to move from an IC to a full-time manager?
Or is the reason he is asking for it is the wrong reason?
Exactly.
Yep.
So with that, I think we can stop.
Absolutely. Well, I realize that my energy is so low when I'm sick, then I let you speak so much.
Yes. So people are going to suffer. And hopefully you didn't kill Dave.
I hope so. Yeah, this virus, I think we killed the cat.
We killed
Wow.
the cat.
I feel fine.
The cat didn't eat his breakfast yet.
Yep.
I'm very worried.
Yes.
He has
He's
a
fat
5 p.m. appointment with the vet. He hasn't missed his breakfast in 5
years.
years, I think. This is bad. I hope he didn't eat something in the vent room, the HVAC room.
Yes.
Maybe that's the reason for him. Well, with that, let's have the outro. Thanks, everyone. The Didi and Lital Show is a weekly podcast. Please rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. Share with your friends. If you want to be on the show, reach out to Didi or myself on LinkedIn. Hope to see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.